Hello, and welcome to my class. What I want to do today is something that I've been practicing for a little while, and that is partially drawing from the mind. Some people call it intuitive drawing. I'm not sure what to call it. Basically, what I'm trying to do is separate myself from a reference photo. I am, and probably many of you with me, are used to working with a reference photo. I found that after a while, the reference photos started to work against me instead of with me. And what I started doing was I looked at the reference photo for a while, made a basic sketch sometimes, and worked off that, creating a painting. And that worked for me so well that I started practicing drawing things that I knew were in my mind, but we're simply not used to bringing those images up in our mind and actually focusing on them and trying to draw off what's in your mind. Because, we see people every day. Sometimes we see people all day. So the human face, logically, should be something that we are able to bring up in our mind. And still, when I tried it, it turned out to be a lot harder than I expected. I've been practicing, and I hope that you want to practice with me, because I did find that after a couple of times it started to get a lot easier. And what happened is I started looking at reference photos and I sort of stored the general angle, lighting, shape in my mind, and it allowed me to paint with a lot more freedom and a lot more creative input than during the times when I was constantly rechecking my reference photo to see if I was on the right track, right? So what I'm going to do in this project is I'm going to take a look in the mirror that is in my bathroom, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to start drawing whatever information is stored in my mind. And I will guarantee you, if you start doing this in the beginning, on the way back from the bathroom, 80% is going to be gone. Okay, but that's okay because it takes practice, and it's also a really fun experiment to do. So if you feel the need during your drawing, painting, to go back to the bathroom and recheck a certain angle or recheck a certain facial feature, go right ahead and then come back and continue drawing. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. I will be walking back and forth to the bathroom, but you're not going to see that in the video because I cut it out. So it's going to look like I'm working super smooth, but I actually had a lot of trouble with this project. So I hope it's fun for you to try this. I hope you want to do this with me. And yeah, let's go ahead and give it a try. For this project, I'm using an off-white drawing paper, a stick of compressed charcoal, few pieces of vine or willow charcoal, and I have 3 pastels in 3 different values. Mine are from Rembrandt in a gray green shade. You can use any color you want. I have a cloth and I have some white gesso, and that's it. So I'm going to start with some really free movements, very basic, and this is also, to just warm yourself up a little bit and, break that maybe tension you feel when you start on a fresh piece of paper or a white canvas. I'm going to trust that most of this is not going to be visible, partially maybe. So it's just charcoal, wiping it off a little bit. You can use pastel if you want, compressed charcoal. Just make sure you don't wipe everything off. We need something on there. And the only thing I'm focusing on is that one side of the face that is in the shadow, that I know is dark. And then I'm going to switch to white gesso. I'm going to apply it with a cloth, again, to prevent myself from, going into detail at an early stage. And I'm going to try and focus on the highlights of the face. And depending on the light that hits your face when you look in the mirror, you need to determine where you see those lighter parts and, try and apply a little bit of paint in those areas. There is not a lot of dark underneath yet, so it's not going to look too, whoa, that's white. But this, for me, it helped sometimes to start with the highlights, because I think most of us, intuitively, we start with the darker areas or outlines. And sometimes when you're practicing, it can help to, turn things around a little bit and start with those highlights instead of the darker areas. So I'm switching back to charcoal, and what I'm going to focus on now is that line between the nose and the darker area of the face. For us, in my case, that's the right side of the face. And when you light the face from one direction, you will see that the nose catches quite a bit of light because it sticks out. So it creates a very obvious outline. And again, I'm just trying to project what I saw in the mirror onto my paper. And sometimes I need a minute, to refocus and to bring up that image again in my mind. You don't see it in this video because I edited it out. But sometimes I take a moment to refresh that image in my mind. And then that second eye socket that is on the lighter side of the face, it tends to move it tends to move inwards a little bit towards the nose because of the angle of the face again. But like I said before, try not to worry too much about getting the features and the anatomy perfect when you work like this. Yeah, working from an image in your mind takes a lot of practice. It really does. And the reason I can do it relatively well, as in compared to, say, a year ago, is because I practiced a lot. And the things I did a year ago, drawing from, my mind, let's not talk about that. It takes a bit of determination to get through that, but it does, it improves a lot if you keep practicing. It really does. So because I have this tilted face, this image in my mind, it also means that it affects the jawline. That angle of the jaw is moved upwards a little bit. And more of the hair is visible. When you turn your head forward, more of the hair that is on top of your head becomes visible. I'm just going to block in a really large and dark area. See how I like it. Probably going to work over it a little bit. Maybe separate that there from, sort of try and find the edge of the hair. And the nostril in the on the darker side of the face, in my case, is not visible, I think. And this is also, the thing with drawing from your mind is that people's different facial features are going to look so different when you turn the head. When it's anything other than, a front view. Now I have my cloth again, and I sprayed just a little bit of water on it, really just a little bit, so that the compressed charcoal moves a little bit more. And don't worry about wiping over lighter areas, etc., because we're going to go back in with that white gesso again and bring out those highlights. But I like this way of building layers. You know, even when you have a layer that you don't like, it's going to support whatever you put over it, on top of it. I'm going to take my green gray pastel. This is the darkest variety, and it's still lighter than black. So in this case, it's sort of a dark mid-tone. I'm going to add that in. And if you at any point feel like you need to look in the mirror again to sort of refresh that image in your mind, just go ahead. You know, for me especially, that the nose and the way that it behaves when you turn your face, it's very tricky sometimes. Here's the area underneath the nose. And on the side of the face there, the cheekbone that catches some light, and the eyelid also. And then the shoulder I think is sitting pretty high, which is what happens when you tilt your head forward. You bend your neck. So your shoulders appear to be higher. Let's get a little more black in there. I'm not going to draw any eyes. I'm not even at a point where I might be able to draw an eye from my mind, but not in this setting. You know, I don't want to deal with how eyelids behave when you tilt the head in two different directions. That is very difficult. So I'm just going to focus, the same goes for the mouth, and just going to focus on the basic larger shapes, which in the case of the eye is mostly the eye socket. Okay, that is a pretty big shape, sitting between, you know, your eyebrow and then the top of your cheek. And then the hairline, I'm not going to do any ears either. Just trying to get the hairline correct. And then some cloth again. I put a little more water on it this time. Any water-soluble, obviously, material will dissolve in water, so pastel, charcoal, anything dry and powdered will react. And you don't have to rub or press, but you can like swipe it over your paper and create pretty interesting marks. And if it starts to look a little scary, your face, don't worry about it. Because again, this is an interesting foundation to add in some highlights, you know, bring back some more, you know, the smaller shapes, if you will. Because right now it looks creepy, let's be honest. But I go back and forth like this. So I put in the lines and I put in the shadows, and then I wipe them down. And it feels sometimes that you're starting over, like you're undoing what you just did and have to start over, but it's not actually how it works, because again, all that texture from the wiping with the cloth and everything you put on there is going to contribute something to the textural elements and to the dynamic of your piece. So I'm going to work a little bit lighter now. I'm going to try and trace those features, not like precisely trace, but sort of where I feel that they would be. It's almost like touching the face in your mind with your hands. And then your hand is going to learn that whatever you trace in your mind, that it can follow that shape on the paper. And if you want, you can try again in your mind to sort of focus on certain features. See if you can see more detail in there. And it's also, a practice of the mind as much as it is a practice in art on paper, because we're not all of us, at least I'm not used to rendering detailed images in my mind. It's not something we learned in school or in any job. We had an exercise in a parent meeting on the school that my son goes to, asking, look at each other and then asking, okay, what color are their eyes? And it's embarrassing how little detail you remember about the people that you look at. And again, if you need to look in the mirror, go right ahead, because that is part of the practice. And the more you practice, the less you're going to need that mirror. And the more variation you can create in the images that you see and the faces that you think of and render in your mind. I'm trying to get the right shape there with that mouth going in the chin. It's difficult enough if you're looking at a reference photo. It's not a very easy angle that I chose, is it? But this way of drawing can be quite forgiving. If you just try and focus on the larger shapes, and work in a little bit of texture. I'm still not happy with that shape. That bridge of the nose often catches a lot of light, right? Because again, it sticks out. And the great thing about pastel, why I like it, especially in combination with charcoal, is that you can layer it over charcoal very lightly. And you get sort of this layered textural effect that is quite special. It's almost a little bit like there's a veil over it. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but I like the combination. I'm just going to try and bring out a little bit of shape within that eye socket, because right now it's one big black hole. I'm going to take my lightest and do that brow bone, the area below your eyebrow. And those shapes, the cheek above the eyebrow, the brow bone itself, they together also determine the shape of the eye. So you don't actually have to draw the actual shape of the eye. You can draw the highlights around it and end up with a reasonable looking general shape of an eye. And then add in wherever you think you need some more darker lines or areas. I'm using willow charcoal here, so it's pretty soft and it's not like 100% black. That nose is so difficult at this angle. Why did I choose this angle? I feel like my mind is trying to sabotage me. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's a fun angle, really, to practice. And I think overall, it's not bad. It's not perfect. It's not, probably not even accurate. But overall, when I look at it, I'm like, okay, I can live with this. It looks nice. And I hope you enjoyed this little exercise. It was short. And I do this. I don't want to say I do this every day or even every week, because I don't. But it's one of those exercises that I like to remember. And I do it every now and then when I feel like it. And I think being able to draw at least partially from the mind, it really opens, new creative doors. And you can combine this sort of drawing from the mind with an actual reference photo by just looking at it for, say, 5 minutes, or every 15 minutes you're painting, take a look at your reference photo, and it allows you to paint creatively and unique pieces, and at the same time have sort of a guideline in that reference photo, right? Because I think we're all looking for a way to stop copying reference photos, to not be led by a reference photo. So I think that practicing in this way, half looking at the photo or the mirror, and then trying to extend the time that you work without looking at it, I think that can really add a lot to your creative process. So again, I hope you enjoyed this. And if you want to tag me in your work, let me know what you made. I'd love to see that. Thank you for watching.